Hi, everyone. It's Joanne Moffat, and I'm here today to talk with you about grief and change, embracing our vulnerabilities so we can move into the change cycle. This really came about because that's what we're going through right now. We're grieving the loss of what we knew, and we're moving into something new, which is change. So, this has been a loss for us, a loss of what we've known. Let's look at this, our personal stories with loss. We all have personal stories. Many of us have had a lot of loss, and some of us have just had a little loss. But regardless, whatever loss we've experienced, it's ours. We've had loss of family members, pets, friends, and relatives. What I don't have written up there is also colleagues. Loss is a change. It's a change from what's normal, from what we've known. And our basic needs are altered. So, some of you who've seen me present before know that I like Brene Brown. The book that I'm referring to here with Rising Strong is called Rising Strong. And Brene talks about rising strong as we rise from our falls and we face hurt in a way that brings more wisdom and wholeheartedness to our lives. That is really, something that may be hard to hear right now because we may not be feeling so wise. But let's go through this a bit together. The how of this, the how of how we get into that, new wisdom is a transformation. It's a transformation from what we knew to what we can be. So it's what we knew and what we were to what we're becoming. So let's first, when I said the altering of your basic needs, let's think about basic needs. And again, some of you have seen the Abraham Maslow as a psychologist, and I like to refer to him in this hierarchy of needs. We look at the basic needs, the physiological needs. Well, our basic needs there, we're still, for the most part, getting what we need, but we're getting it differently. Some of us aren't going to the food store anymore. Some of us are getting our food delivered, or we're doing the curbside pickup, for example. Some of us have sleep that has been altered. I was talking to somebody, and this is a friend back east, and she was saying that she is taking a nap during the day, and she's never done that in her life. I was talking to someone else who said, well, typically I work during the day, but now I still work, but it's really hard to just be sitting at my computer. So I get up and I mopped the floor the other day. So it's just different. That sense of safety has changed. Our safety, how we perceive our safety, the security of employment. Yeah, we're still employed, but it's different. The security and the safety of our environment, well, that's totally skewed. We're in a pandemic. When we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we also look at love and belonging. And Even though we still have our friendships and our families, it's different. We're doing it differently. We're not doing get togethers for coffee unless they're virtual. And we're not going out to dinner with lots of friends. For those of you that celebrated Easter, I'm sure you felt that Easter was very different this year. And then, of course, our esteem, our sense of self, our confidence, it can be rocked when there's been loss and change. And that does lead into a different sense of how we are actualized, how we are feeling about ourselves in relationship to the world. So let's begin this process by first looking at the stages of grief and what may be triggering some of our other losses. So as we do this together, we're going to look at what you're experiencing. And when we're looking at what we're experiencing, we're going to look at specifically your behavior. We're going to look at how you're reacting with that part of our brain. Remember, the amygdala is the part of our brain that protects us from dangerous situations. The amygdala is that fight, flight, freeze response. So that impacts our behavior. Are you experiencing behavior changes? We're going to look at what you're thinking and your cognitive distortions, perhaps. And we're going to look at what you're feeling. So I very much like this screen. I love this poster. What do you notice? Do you notice the water and the waves? It's a little rocky. It's a rocky shore. Here, grief is like the ocean. It comes on waves, ebbing and flowing. All we can do is learn to swim. And that's written by Vicki Harrison. So you've probably heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote this book on death and dying in the early 1960s, or actually mid-1960s, sorry. And as an undergraduate social work student back in the 80s, I read that book, of course, and she is still an acclaimed expert, even though she has passed, on these stages of grief. When we look at the stages of grief here, you can see, and I'm going to use my little arrow, that there's energy on the bar graph here and the progression of the stages of grief going that way. And when we look at our energy in that first stage of denial, this is where, we're not believing that this can really be happening. And we then go into, and there's a lot of energy there, right? We're just moving along like life is what it is. And then there's the anger stage, typically saying things like it's not fair. And we start to have a little bit less energy here. Then we go into bargaining, where I'll do anything. That's where we hear the what if statements. Less energy. And then really depleted when we get into the depression stage. And then there's the acceptance stage. You can't change what's happening. And notice that when you're in the acceptance stage, your energy is back to where it typically is. You have more energy. So, how do we get there? First, let's look at these stages together. This first stage is denial, and we look at grief. Yeah. We look at grief as, you know, this isn't happening to me. Um, everything's okay. What are your words? What are you saying? I have to tell you a little story really quick. Is personal. When this pandemic first started, I was very cautious and really giving my family messages of please take care of yourself. You know, um, make sure you're following the CDC guidelines. And I have a niece who's like a little sister to me, and she lives and works in New York State, and she had said, well, the media is what's making this bigger than it is. Boy, was she in denial. She's not there anymore, I'll tell you that. But that's that first stage of grief, of denial. What were your words? What have you heard yourself saying? And in this stage is when we use that coping strategy of just kind of numbness so we can get through. Remember, we had more energy. We had more energy when we were in denial. So we were just getting through. We were doing what we had to do. Oh, yeah, we can stay home from work. That's okay. We can stay home. It'll just be a couple of weeks. Our goal during that time was to just get through each day. We're just going to get through each day and it'll be okay, because we know we're going to get back there. We're going to get back to work. I'm going to be seeing everybody soon. The positive aspect of denial is that we still have that energy. So we can still be, and our basic needs are still being met. We're still eating right and doing what we need to do. We're still sleeping right. And so we're getting stronger. And with that strength, we can begin to feel more emotion. So it kind of is like a jet propeller, in that denial propels us into moving into the other emotions. And that emotion of anger is something that is that second stage of grief. And it's something that we, as I have here, it's a very common emotion. We're all used to feeling angry, all used to feeling that. But unpacking the anger can bring up some vulnerabilities. What does that mean? Well, the first part, as I say here, anger is typically directed at someone or something. So it might be directed at the district for making us do it this way, or at, something political, or, our government, or our state, or the CDC. But as we really begin to unpack it, and how, this pandemic is affecting us as a culture and society, and our children, our students, it can bring up our own vulnerabilities. We may try to suppress it, just stuff it, and internalize it. It may make us get into the fight, flight, and freeze responses. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more with the change cycle, in that when you're doing the fight, flight, and freeze, when you're angry, you may be, more argumentative. You may be, that's that fight response. You may be flight, doing the, avoiding, or just keeping yourself so busy. And you might do freeze, where you're just not allowing yourself to be emotionally available. You're isolating. So the caution with the internalizing aspect of anger is that it can cause you physiological pain. That psychophysiological pain, that's mind body symptoms. That's where you can start to feel stomach aches and migraines. You might, your immune system could become suppressed, and you could just be more susceptible to getting colds. And what happens when you have colds? You start to think, oh, I might have the virus. And internalizing anger can also lead to depression because you get stuck in the freeze response of becoming emotionally numb, and um, you aren't able to function. You also could just get very panicked during this time. And your anxiety, when you are internalizing anger, it can be depression or anxiety where you just begin to have more freakouts about things. Big reactions, as we say with the kids that we work with, big reactions to small problems. So what we need to do is find healthy outlets for the anger. Know that this is all normal. This is a common, normal emotion that we should be experiencing. We just have to have perspective about it. So we need to match our reaction to what's happening around us. And how we do that is working it through. We might journal. That's what I've been doing. I do that every day, but that's mine. That's for me. That's what I do. We should use your support systems. Use them. Who are they? Who's your network of support? Who are those people that help hold you up? You can't see them, but you can FaceTime them. You can call them. You can do what works for you to connect with them. And honestly, exercise does help. Really taking that break every day, going outside, getting some vitamin D really does help. I don't have this on here, but exercise is not only a good release, but it's also something that can help you with getting those basic needs met. That, along with healthy eating and drinking water, lots of water. And finding your voice in this pandemic is important. Being able to talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. The next stage of the grief process is bargaining. And in this stage, this third stage of grief, remember that on that energy cycle, it was where we're starting to wane in our energy. And this is important for you to know that we don't just go from one stage to another to another. We can ebb and flow. We can go back and forth. And in doing that, know that you may be feeling okay one day and angry another day, okay one day and bargaining another day. So this is where we try to make a truce with the event that's causing the loss. So, we've maybe heard people or even ourselves try to minimize what's happening. I know that I've done this. Like if I wear a mask, I can just go ahead and be, doing what I need to do. But, I have to still be following the CDC guidelines. I can't just wear a mask and go back into work. I can't do that. I have to be doing the social distancing. I have to be following what the protocol is. But I like to bargain. This is where, bargaining is where we try to negotiate our way out of the loss. And unfortunately, we can't do that. It's a sense of feeling stuck. When we feel stuck, we try to get unstuck. That's normal. Again, this is a very normal thing. to try to get unstuck. The next stage is the depression stage, and this is where our attention is on that new reality of, I can't bear this. And again, emphasizing that this is a normal response to loss. So this is kind of where I've been lately. So I need to really take a breath and talk with you in an even voice, but know that this is really normal. I'm not like where I can't function, but I'm more sad, just really sad. When we heard a week and a half ago that we weren't going to open, when our schools were not going to open this year, it was the reality. This is it this year. This is it. And not seeing those kids' faces for the rest of the year, that's sad. It's really sad. Not being with our colleagues for the rest of the year. It's really hard. It's hard. So this is a very normal response. And when you experience depression, you need to look at what your behavior is. And we all feel it in different ways. And we can all function and still be feeling it. We just might have less energy. Our sleep patterns could be impacted. Our eating patterns. Someone I know was talking about how she goes into the kitchen and just grazes, and there's all these little memes on social media right now about, gaining weight during this time. So that's important for you to be aware of your eating patterns. If you hear yourself saying or acknowledge the thoughts of it's never going to get better, that's that fatalistic thinking, and it's okay to feel all this stuff, but you need to share it. Sharing helps to get some perspective, and that's what you need to get out of this. Moving from depression is into acceptance. And when we have acceptance, we can accept that new reality. We're sad. We've had a lot of loss, but we're okay. We've got some new norms, new ways of doing things. I bet you never thought you'd be doing this right now, right? We have to listen to our needs. What are our needs today? And we need to recognize that we will evolve through this change. We're going to have new learnings, new connections, and new patterns. But remember, only when you feel your grief can you move on. Going through this grief process is the only way that you're going to be able to feel a full range of all emotion. You're not going to be able to feel happy or joy if you don't allow yourself to feel anger or sadness. You have to be able to get through and feel everything, even though it's uncomfortable. So we're going to find some meaning. How do we move forward as we grieve? That's the question, right? We hold on to that which we know, our love and our passion for the work we do. That's why we show up every day, right, with the kids, because we love that. That's our passion. And we're going to still be there in a different way for now. And we're going to embrace change. So let's look at what the change cycle is, as we look at the change cycle, I found this on the internet, and you guys are the heroes, right? You're the heroes. The cycle of change, or hero's journey. Nobody said you were going to have to do this, but you're doing it. And you're a hero. You're being brave. You're taking on new stuff. So, what is this? When we're feeling grief, we go through all those different stages of grief, and simultaneously we take on change. So we're going to look at the change cycle that we have here. We're going to look at how it feels stable at first. Remember, it felt stable when you're just in denial. And then it feels stressful as you start to feel feelings and do the bargaining. You feel that chaos. And then as you move out of depression, you get a sense of renewal into the acceptance and that new stability. Let's see how we do it. First, let's look at our place in the change cycle. I have a quote here from Albert Einstein's daughter, Annie, and she says, "My mind cares because it can. My heart cares because it must." Some of you have maybe heard about the left side and the right side of the brain. The left side of our brain is that logical side. That is the knowledge. I can. My mind cares because I can. That's logical thinking. The right side of our brain is our emotional side. That is where we say, my heart cares because it must, because I feel. So we are going to logically look at the change cycle and see where our feelings are as we go through this together. So we look at the change cycle. We're going to look at stress, chaos, and renewal. With stress, there's that loss and doubt, chaos, discomfort, and renewal, discovery, understanding, and integration. And I want you to know about this change cycle that I'm referring to. You probably have seen on the news Dr. Tony Fauci, and he first became prominent in the field of public health back in the 80s with the pandemic of AIDS. So, I looked at, having lived through that crazy time period. I mean, AIDS is still here, but there's a lot of medications. And when it first came about, there was a lot of discussion on caregiving and stages of grief and change. So I looked at the change cycle that became prominent back then. And I'm going to show you this little sheet, which I don't have on your, oh, there we go. It's straight. I'm going to see if I can get it up there a little bit more. But this is all new to me too. I'm taking on new learning, but I'm going to go through this together. Just letting you know that it comes from something and that is valuable and has been used. So let's look at loss, which is stage 1 of the change cycle, where we're feeling the most stress. And when we think about, feelings of grief, as we move in our grief cycle, this is where we begin to move into that feeling stage of anger and bargaining. We have feelings of fear, our thoughts are cautious, and our behavior can be paralyzed. Remember, our brain with the amygdala is beginning to kick in where once we're going through denial, the stress is making us fearful, and our amygdala is saying, oh, I'm going to protect you. So that's where we can become, frozen with that fight, flight, freeze. And then we might move into the doubt stage of feeling resentful, and our thoughts can be skeptical, and our behavior can be resistant. Discomfort in this cycle of change is where we are, that stage 3, where we're experiencing that chaotic feeling, that chaotic chaos of anxiety, panic, confusion, and our behavior's not productive. It's hard to focus when we're feeling anxiety. That free floating sense of uncertainty, of, again, fight, flight, freeze, where we're getting perhaps more argumentative and lashing out at others instead of at in a productive, healthy way. We're just lashing out. That's really anxiety. When we move into that 4th stage of change, and think about that for you, that's where discovery, where you're beginning to get feelings of anticipation. You're becoming more creative in how you get things done, and you're getting more energy. So it's almost like there's that light coming out. You're seeing the light out of the end of the tunnel. You're beginning to see that you're anticipating that you can take on some new stuff. You're getting more creative in how you're doing your day, and you have a bit more energy. This 5th stage of change is a renewal, where you begin to feel more confident, and your thoughts are more pragmatic, and you're feeling more productive. So you're feeling like, the days aren't just blurring from one to the other. You have a beginning, middle, and end to what you're doing. It's more logical. And when you think back on your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your needs are getting met. You're sleeping better, eating better. You're connecting more. You're doing things in a more focused way. You're connecting with people. It's different, but you're doing it. And you're doing it with confidence. And the 6th stage of change in this change cycle is where you have integration, where you're feeling satisfied, your thoughts are focused, and you're even becoming more generous in your behavior. Maybe you're checking in on a neighbor. Maybe you're checking in on more friends, relatives. But you are just in that renewal stage. Are you there yet? So living with loss and finding balance with change, it's hard. You have to recognize your feelings. You have to own them. You need to be able to receive support. Some of you are so good at giving support, but it's harder to receive support. Recognize the negatives and the positives. Yeah, there's so much negativity right now, but there's also some positives with this. I've been listening to stories of positives lately. Every day I try to hear those, and even for myself, I'm not trying to be Pollyanna or make lemonade out of lemons, but quite honestly, what we need to be doing is looking at what is it that is happening that's a good thing now. Maybe you're finding some balance in working from home that is new for you that you never had before. Maybe you're connecting with someone that you hadn't connected with in a long time. Regardless, you have to find your own path. This is your journey. And then you have to move forward. The bottom line is that we are all in this together, and you are not alone. I want to end by reading you something from Maya Angelou, and who's an author. And this is what she said. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. We're not going to be reduced by this, Marysville. We're not. We're not going to be reduced by this. We're going to move on. And the next time that you're feeling bad, and this, by the way, I'm getting from Richard Carlson, who wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Not to say this isn't small stuff, it's big stuff. But the next time you're feeling bad, rather than fight it, try to relax. And this is what I'm saying. Take a deep breath. Recognize where you're at in your stages of grief, where you're at in the change cycle. Give yourself grace. Have that growth mindset that we encourage our kids to have. And know we can do this together.